In this video I'll show you how to control a servo motor with Embrio. This also serves as an example of how to use any Arduino library code to interact with the Arduino hardware. I have an Arduino Uno with a hobby servo. I plug the power and ground wires from the servo into the 5V and ground pins on the Arduino and the signal wire into pin 9. Remember to use a PWM enabled pin. I'll create a new project and call it servo control. On the default agent, I add a controller output node from the right-click menu. An output node has 3 type settings. The first 2 do an analog or digital write. The custom mode lets you write your own Arduino code, which is what I'll do here. The node opens up with areas to write code, which will look familiar if you've already done some Arduino programming. To determine what to enter in these boxes, I'll first go to the reference section on the Arduino website. At the bottom is a link to the libraries page. Here there's a library for servos. Over on the right there's an example for controlling a servo with a knob. I scroll down to that page to find the Arduino code needed to control a servo. Arduino is great at providing concise samples like this, and this technique should work for just about any library code you find on the Arduino website. First I'll copy the line that includes the servo library into the includes box on the node. Now in the declaration section I'll create the servo variable. When writing code in an output node like this, make sure any variable names you define are unique to your project. Next in the setup section I'll call the servo attach function on pin 9. The last box lets you write code that executes on an update. The drop-down lets you pick when the code runs. I'm going to change it to every update. The other options are to update only when the input value changes or when an input trigger fires. Remember that the refresh rate drop-down in the corner of the agent editing screen determines how many times per second nodes on the screen update. For a servo, I'm going to change it from the default of 32 times per second to 64 times per second for smoother action. In the update code box, I call the write function on my servo. For the variable name, I use the name of the input, which in this case is activation. Remember though that activation is a value from 0 to 1. As in the example code, the servo write function needs a value between 0 and 179. Instead of using the Arduino map function, which works with integers, I will use the transform function that is part of the Embrio library. The parameters are the same as the map function, except the starting range values are floating point numbers instead of integers. Now I click on the connection button and a connection program is uploaded to my Arduino. When it finishes, I can control the servo by dragging on the input activation value.